Pixlika Isaka Sime, who served as the president of the African Congress, delivered a speech titled The Regeneration of Africa at the University of Columbia in April 1906. In his discourse, he reminded us that during the Berlin Conference of 1884, the European powers conspired to partition Africa into spheres of influence for the purpose of manipulating and exploiting its resources. The Germans had a presence in Namibia, Dahomey, now called Benin, and Rwanda, while the British established themselves in Somalia and Eritrea. The French, on the other hand, exerted their influence in Burkina Faso and Mali. These colonial powers were spread throughout the African continent. In 1945, African representatives convened in Manchester, where influential advocates of unity such as Kwame Nkrumah, Jomo Kenyatta, and Marcus Garvey were present. The objective was to decolonize Africa, as they believed that an independent Africa would pave the way for a unified continent. Shortly after Ghana gained independence from colonial rule under the leadership of Kwame Nkrumah, he emphasized that Ghana's independence would be meaningless unless it was linked to the complete liberation of the entire African continent. A year later, Guinea achieved independence in 1958, followed by French Sudan, now known as Mali. This wave of independence spread to numerous other countries. At that time, they believed that unity was necessary in order to overcome the neo-colonialist system, which led to the establishment of the African Union. In 1958, Kwame Nkrumah organized a meeting in Accra, where he urged African leaders to unite, warning them that failure to do so would result in Africa's inability to eradicate neo-colonialism. This same message was reiterated in 1961 when Gamal in Casablanca stressed the urgency of African Union before leaders became entrenched in power. They were well aware of the dangers that political power could bring to the African continent. Simultaneously, while the Casablanca group held their meeting, another gathering of African countries took place in Monrovia. Haile Selassie, Julius Nyerere, and William Tubman, among others, attended this conference. The Casablanca group focused on gradual unity, while the Monrovia team advocated for African unity without delay. The establishment of the Organization of African Unity marked a victory for the Pan-African movement. During this period, the Pan-African spirit was solely dedicated to achieving a united Africa, recognizing that disunity would be a weakness. Initiatives like East African Community in East Africa, SADC in Southern Africa, ECOWAS in West Africa, and the Central African Republic in Central Africa were all implemented to foster unity throughout the African continent. In a meeting of the OAU in 2013, the question arose regarding the fate of the Pan-African state. During this gathering, the then chairman of the OAU penned an imaginary letter to Kwame Nkrumah, seeking his forgiveness for not heeding his call for African unity. They should have listened and joined him in his crusade for African unity without delay. Today, we witness how political power has ensnared African leaders. The emphasis on Pan-Africanism has significantly diminished. In the current political climate, Sudan remains unsettled. Ethiopia is plagued by unrest, Libya has undergone substantial change, and the list goes on. I thought Nkrumah never lived, but how vile that could be. I thought the name was only modeled to define a household in Ghana. Nay, that could be in the realms of wishful thinking. I thought an attempt was never made to toil for African unification. How dreadful that could be. I thought Africa was a universe with Ghana as a continent made of different countries. I thought equality and non-interference in the internal affairs of member states were never parts of the principles of the Organization of the African Unity. Yeah, I thought African Union was a political kingdom that could not be gained by political means. I thought also in 1948 the ex-servicemen that were demonstrating against the skyrocketing cost of living were never opened fire upon. O people of our lands, what beholds our sense of unity? Are our sense of thoughts under captivity or siege, and our friends chosen for us with audacity and pride? But see how they belittle our conscience with pride and arrogance. In the West, we became surrogates and miserable. Have we not become tools in the hands of the manipulator? But where are the great African idols who sought to steer Africa to significant progress and unification? Where are they? Today, we live in an Africa where the results of political elections are always challenged by opponents and described as a to win or lose exercise rather than one to open doors for a new era of transparent leadership. We live in a hungry Africa, an Africa whose political system is established on the slogan, "If you are not an egotist, you won't succeed in politics." And when Nkrumah said Africa is one people, one continent, and one nation, I bet he did not realize the nature of political leadership his descendants will pursue. We are driven into a certain Africa where people kill their African fellows just to occupy a political throne. And we thrive in a saturated atmosphere of coup d'etat. Is the current political system of our leaders not a parasite to the Pan-African mission of unity? I rest it here.